Looks good on my end. Yeah, I can hear you. Can see.
Gratitude. So just start off by defining kind of, the definition of, give us a definition of gratitude, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so gratitude refers to the emotion of feeling grateful. So it's important to understand that gratitude is an emotion, okay? And we hear it a lot, be grateful, feel grateful, express gratitude, whatever. But a lot of people don't really understand what it is, why it's important, or how to practice it. So those are kind of the three main things I want to go over today. So, like I said, it refers to that emotion of feeling grateful or this felt sense of wonder, appreciation, thankfulness for life, and it's something that we don't tend to do very often. In general, we tend to take things for granted. I think most people listening to this podcast right now are either on a phone or on a computer, so they're using the internet, they're using electricity, they're using technology. These are all things that we use every single day, and we take them for granted. And then when it goes out a little bit, or it's a little slow or laggy, we get upset. But we don't really realize how amazing it is that we're able to do this in the first place. We're probably 1,500 miles away right now, and we're able to talk and see each other and talk in live, in real time. That's incredible. I'm sitting in a room right now with air conditioning, whereas I could be, sitting in the 100-degree heat in Louisiana. There's so many things. I've got lights that make it to where I can see. There are all these things that we have in our life, very simple, basic things that we take for granted, but there are people in other places in the world that don't have these luxuries, and for us, they seem like basic necessities and like things that we just should have, but other people don't have these things. So it's important to look at everything, the big things, the small things, and just try to appreciate these things, really focus on them and give them your energy and your mindfulness, and think about how much it means to you to have these things. Clean water, indoor plumbing, the ability to walk, the ability to talk, to see. Like these are all things that we didn't necessarily choose to get in our lives. We just got them, you know? And there are some people who are born without these things. And we were, and most people listening to this were born with these things. So I think it's important to take time to intentionally practice gratitude for the things in your life, for the experiences you've had in your life, the people in your life, for the things that you have. Uh, and, most people, they practice gratitude maybe one day out of the year uh, on a holiday, Thanksgiving. Everybody goes around the table and they say, "What are you thankful for?" Right? And most people hate doing this exercise because it's corny and whatever. And that's the only time they think about gratitude or thankfulness or appreciation. And most of the time, people, when they do that exercise, they're not even really practicing gratitude. They're just saying something that they think they're supposed to say. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for my house, my car, and then that's it. So we've got to get past this point of, only practicing this one time a year and not really doing it the right way, to where we can start to understand the importance of it and then how to practice it and build it into your daily routine, so that hopefully you can turn this gratefulness into a way of life. Just how you start to orient yourself in the world and how you start to see things and experiences. And if you can start to be more grateful in general, there's a plethora of benefits that come along with that. And, we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, talk a little bit, like I've heard of like a gratitude practice where
Yeah.
you're actually writing down what you're grateful for each day. And so like that's kind of a challenge. Like you're going to use up the things that you brought up pretty quickly, like running water and electricity, internet. You have to really dig in and understand like what you're truly grateful for, and not that you're not truly grateful for those things, but then you're going to have to explore other things that are in your life that you're grateful for. So talk about like that and why it's so important. Because your brain's wired to be negative, right?
Yeah.
So how do you overcome that negativity and use gratitude to have a positive outlook on life?
Yeah. So we'll talk about that exercise. That's one of the most common gratitude exercises that you'll find in research and online is just every day write down three things that you're grateful for. And part of this challenge is coming up with new things every single day. You could write down the same three things every day, but that might increase your depth of gratitude for those three things, but you won't have the breadth of gratitude for all of the things in your life. So it's helpful to practice coming up with new things that you're grateful for every single day. And it is challenging, but I think after you start doing it a little while, you start realizing you can be grateful for the smallest of things. The smallest of things. I love I was cracking eggs this morning and I cracked one and it was just the most beautiful orange color, that you get with the yolk. And it could be as simple as that, like I cracked four eggs this morning and one of them was just a perfect color orange and it was so beautiful. Like I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I get to eat fresh eggs, that make me feel good and contribute to the health of my body. Like it can be small things like that. It could be I was walking to the store and I passed by somebody's house and they had this jasmine plant and it smelled really good. I'm grateful that I got to do that. It can be really small things, and the more you practice, the more creative you start to get with your gratitude. And then, like I said, it eventually turns into this grateful disposition to where you're just grateful for every experience, every moment in your life. And that's when the real benefits start to sink in. Um, the big thing, though, with this gratitude practice, with the journaling exercise that gets a lot of people in trouble, and it's a huge misconception with gratitude practice, is the exercise is not writing down three things. Okay. And let me explain this because that's part of the exercise. You do have to write down three things. But the real exercise comes when you feel the gratitude for each one of those things. So I could right now in 4.5 seconds write down, I'm grateful for my house, my car, and my girlfriend. That's it. I'm done. I practiced gratitude. That's what most people think gratitude practice is. I didn't practice gratitude just then. All I did was write down three things that I'm grateful for. I was in my head when I did that exercise. That was a cognitive exercise, a thinking based exercise. Gratitude, like I said before, is an emotion. So the exercise needs to be a feeling based exercise. When you write down these things, you need to practice feeling gratitude in your heart. You need to bring up this emotion or embody this emotion of gratitude. That's what you're practicing. You're not trying to practice thinking about gratitude. You're trying to practice feeling grateful. So when you do this exercise, you should be feeling grateful. The more you feel grateful, the more easily you will feel grateful again in the future. So you're creating these pathways, feeling based pathways, not thinking pathways, but feeling emotional pathways to gratitude. So it's so important when you do this exercise that you take a minute with each one of the things that you write down and you let it sink in. I'm grateful for my car, right? It's something that people take for granted all the time. They want a new car. That's why we always flip it and get a new one. And they're always complaining about their car. Oh, it always breaks down or it doesn't get good gas mileage or whatever. It doesn't look good. Well, you have a car though, if you are listening and have a car, so what are you grateful about with that car? Why are you grateful for that car? What value does it add to your life? How might your life be affected if that were to just poof and disappear today? So really take time with that thing that you're practicing gratitude for and try to feel that sense of gratitude or appreciation for that thing or person or event or experience and feel that. Once you can feel it in your body, the research says hang on to that feeling for 15 to 30 seconds. And there's neuroscience that backs this up. But if you can hang on to that feeling, now you're letting it sink in at a deeper level, and you've really done that rep of gratitude practice. This, like I said, most people don't even realize that this is how you're supposed to be practicing gratitude. They think, oh, well, I looked it up. It said write down three things, or, my coach told me to do this, or my therapist said write down three things. And that's right, but that's not even half the practice. That's just the first little bit. Once you write it down, then you've got to actually feel gratitude for those things. It can be an emotional process. You might start, you know, getting a little teary eyed, like overwhelmed with appreciation. Like, man, this adds so much value to my life. I'm so happy I have this person in my life, or, this pet that I have in my life, or whatever it might be. Like, I'm so thankful for this. You might get a little emotional doing this exercise. That's gratitude. You know what I mean? Like, that's what you're looking for. And when you feel that, hang on to that feeling. And then once you've done that, you can move on to the next one.
So let me ask you real quick. This sounds a little tricky for some people to kind of maybe get the hang of. So what are some pointers you might have that you've used with some of your clients where you've encouraged them to engage in this practice? And like you pointed out, like it's super easy, but it's different just to write something down. Like you gave lots of examples. So how do you kind of turn the corner and find a way to attach emotion to that graph?
Well, I think just investigating it,
Mm-hmm.
like I mentioned, when you pick out something, let's say my dog. I definitely had a point in my life. My dog's 10 years old now. I had a point in my life when I had the dog, and there were just days when I was like, what why did I get this dog? This is more hassle than it is, anything else. I've got to pay for this. I got to pay for that. I got to take it on walks. I got to do this. I just started taking her for granted, and started to, you know, stop appreciating her and what she gave to me, and the energy that she gave to me when I would come home from work, or just anytime. Dogs are lovers 100% of the time. And I started taking those things for granted. So you could take something like a pet and think about it. Think about that pet. What does that pet do that makes you feel happy? That adds joy to your life, that adds meaning, purpose, value in any way to your life. Think about those moments. Think about some of the happiest moments you've had with that pet or that person or that car, whatever it is. Think about those things and really start to investigate this thing that you are practicing gratitude for. And like I said, like ask yourself, what might this feel like if this were to disappear tomorrow and I just wake up and I don't have this pet anymore? That's a lot of times once it really sinks in on how meaningful something is to us, once we take it away. This is why parents will use, this as punishment sometimes, or all right, no phone for a week. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I really like my phone. Like, this sucks, you know?
Right.
So once you take it away, that's when you realize how grateful it is. But we don't always have to wait until it's gone to practice that gratitude and appreciation. You could do it as kind of a thought experiment. And when you do that, it helps you to tap into that gratitude right now and start practicing it before that thing is gone. You don't have to wait until your parents pass to start telling them that you appreciate them and that you're grateful. It's like you go to a funeral and you hear the eulogy and all these amazing things that people say about that person who just passed. Why don't you tell that to the person before they pass? Like, you can do that as well. And I think that's kind of the one of the steps in the thought experiment that helps a lot, is imagining what might your life be like, or how might you be affected if this thing were to be taken away from you. And that
Right.
thing could be your physical health. Another thing that we take for granted all the time, like I can walk. You know what I mean? I can talk, I can see, I can smell, I can taste, I can do all these things. I didn't choose to do these things. I was born with these abilities and I'm grateful for that. But how might my life be affected if I were to, go for a walk tomorrow and get hit by a car and I'm paralyzed from the neck down? That could happen. That happens to people every single day by no fault of their own. How might my life be affected if I were to develop some kind of, degenerative brain disorder like ALS? Again, these things happen to people every single day and they didn't do anything wrong. They just got that roll of the dice. So you can think about these things, and when you start to explore some of these different areas of, man, like what would my life be like if I wasn't able to walk anymore, or if I lost my vision, you know? And just thinking about that will help you to appreciate your ability to walk, or help you appreciate your ability to see. And so often these are things that we take for granted and we go, oh, well, I don't walk fast enough. My eyesight isn't good enough, and we're always thinking about the other side and like, what, this should be better, you know? And it's important to think about the other, the backward side of how could this actually could be a lot worse, you know? Like this is a crazy situation right now, but I'm thankful it's not worse.
Yeah. Talk about how your appreciation, your gratitude for one thing, then kind of bleeds over into the other things in your life, and how it just kind of rewires. Like I said, I believe the research shows that human beings are our first reaction is always negative. Like it's kind of the
Right.
way we're wired. And so how do these positive thoughts bleed over into your other thoughts and just completely change the way you perceive the world, I guess?
Yeah. And you're right in what you're talking about. Like as humans, we do have this negativity bias that's built into us because it served us, evolutionarily speaking. It served our ancestors to, focus on the negatives. In the world we live in now, it doesn't serve us as much anymore. So it's important to try to override that coding that we have in our brain and try to make it more positive, more optimistic, more grateful. So uh, practicing daily will help you to make that transition and help you to rewire your brain. What you're trying to do is you're trying to go from a state of gratitude to a trait of gratitude. Okay, so this transition is state to trait. So state means I'm currently feeling grateful. So you might experience a state of gratitude, once or twice a year. Like I said, Thanksgiving, you might really feel it at that point and be like, wow, I'm really thankful to have the family that I have. It could have been a lot worse. I love everybody here and I'm happy to be here and look at this food and, we get to watch football. Like this is awesome. Like I'm super grateful for this. That's what it feels like to experience that state of gratitude. And we can feel a state of any emotion, state of confidence, state of optimism, state of joy, state of anger, right? The more you experience that one emotion, the more you have that state of gratefulness, the more likely you are to develop a trait of gratitude, to where this becomes kind of a core aspect of your personality, to where it's not just I'm feeling grateful right now, but it's I am a grateful person. I experience gratitude so much that I have developed a trait of gratitude. I carry it with me everywhere I go. I am just a grateful person. That's what ultimately we're trying to build. And same thing goes with a lot of different emotions, confidence, optimism, um, a sense of security and self-love, compassion. Like these are all things that can be built from states to traits. And once you get it into that trait, it's like, yeah, like you like it's like you just added another member to the team and now, you're rolling deep into all the situations that you're going in. You have that sense of safety of like, hey man, like no matter what happens, at least I've got gratitude with me, and at least I've got confidence with me. And like you bring these things into every situation, and that's helpful because life is scary and there's a lot of different obstacles and adversities that you have to deal with. But if you have gratitude with you throughout that journey, you're able to find that silver lining and you're able to see the good aspects. And um, yeah, it just makes it all a little bit easier. So yeah, that's kind of what's happening as you're going from this state to this trait of gratitude. And I guess, with the practice of doing the three things every day and coming up with new things, what you're doing here is it's called front loading, to where you're creating this system in your mind to where once you start practicing this enough, a week, 2 weeks, your brain starts to wake up and look for, what am I going to be grateful for today? Because you have to think of new things. You can't just use the same things that you used the last week or the week before. So this new system or process starts to get created in your brain where you start going through life looking for things to be grateful for. And so that's where it starts to bring you into this trait, and it starts to change the way that you think, where instead of looking out at the world and saying, oh, the world is a bad place and everyone's out to get me, you're looking out at the world and you're saying, there are things to be grateful out here and I've got to find, where are they? I want to look and see. And then you start realizing like, oh, it's all, I could be grateful for all of it. I'm looking at maybe like 20 different species of trees, right outside my window right now. Those are 20 different things. Each one of those things are extraordinary, and we tend to take these things for granted. And so the more you practice, the more you start to recognize the extraordinariness of the ordinary, small basic things that we take for granted. The sun. I mean, how cool is the sun? You know what I mean? Like there are these things that just like you're like, okay, whatever, it's the sun. I've seen it before. I'm not 3 years old, but it's incredible. It really is. And there's so much.
So let's translate this into, how this affects performance and athletic performance and how you are as a teammate and all the things that go into being an athlete and how gratitude can impact, the way you perform as an athlete and the way you integrate, with the rest of your team and the people who are coaching you, um,
Yeah.
and how that attitude and trait that you're trying to develop can make you better from a performance standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we can look at this from a performance standpoint, and we could also look at it from like a training standpoint or just a sports satisfaction standpoint.
Right.
Okay. And so with the sports satisfaction, there's a lot of things that go into that, like how satisfied are you with your teammates? How satisfied are you with your coaches? How satisfied are you with yourself and your training and your improvement, things like that. The performance is obviously the competition, the games, the matches, and that's like a whole different area, So we'll look at both of these individually. Uh, Gratitude in terms of the sports satisfaction, how much are you getting out of it? It's directly linked. If you're practicing gratitude for your sport specifically, not just for life in general, but for your sport, you're going to start to change the way that you feel about the sport. Instead of going into these training sessions and saying, oh, man, we got to do this training session. It's going to be 2 hours of hard work. Like, I don't want to do this. It's hot outside. I'm tired. I just want to go home. Instead of constantly feeling that, the feeling of like demotivation and not wanting to be here and whatever it might be, you can start practicing gratitude for the fact that you get to do this. Like that's essentially the change that you're making in your mind is you're switching from the I have to do this to I get to do this. Okay. And you hear this a lot, social media and stuff. Like tell yourself you get to do this. And what that is that's a gratitude practice. It's shifting the way that you view this situation so that you're feeling like excited and grateful and thankful, appreciative of the fact that you get to play the sport that you're playing. Again, sports are a privilege that we take for granted. No different than electricity and running water and indoor plumbing. They don't have sports everywhere in the world. You know what I mean? Like you can't go. Soccer is the biggest sport in the world, internationally played. That doesn't mean that every town you go to in the world has an organized soccer team that you can play for. You know what I mean? Like there are some schools that kids might go to where they might want to play sports, but they don't offer that sport at their school. So if you get the opportunity to play a sport in the town that you live in, like that's an incredible privilege, especially at the youth level. That means that there's probably a volunteer coach that's helping to organize this team and to coach you for free. There's probably volunteer referees that are putting the games on and making sure it's a fair game. I know we criticize referees all the time, but most of these people are volunteers who are getting paid very little money, right? Without them, there's no game. There's probably somebody volunteering to help organize the whole league that you're in that's making all of this stuff happen. There's so many things that are going into allowing this opportunity to happen for you. And most of the times we just take it for granted and we don't care. And we're like, oh, this is terrible. I can't believe I have to do this. You know, it's the day after my birthday and I've got to go to practice or I've got to play this game. It's like, you don't have to. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to, but you get to. And so I think switching just how you're viewing sports in general is really important and starting to view it from a privilege and opportunity and something that you appreciate, you know, the chance to play a game and run around with your friends and have fun and develop your body and to learn an art or to master a craft, whatever you're developing, whatever sport you're in, you're developing some kind of skill, technical skill. Like that's cool. That's fun. You know, look at those things. You get to interact with teammates. You get to learn team building skills. These are things that are going to help you in life, right? You get to learn how to deal with mistakes and failure and adversity. You know, you get to learn how to deal with physical discomfort and get to push through those things. These are all life lessons that you're going to carry with your life and you're going to need when you're buying a home and you're fixing it up and you know you're getting married and having kids and all these things and working in the workforce. It's like you're going to have to lean on these skills, and if you're not developing them through sports, hopefully you have another vehicle to develop them. But if you get the opportunity to develop them through sports, like be grateful for that. This is amazing. And not to mention, you know, again, if you're a youth athlete or a high school athlete and you're playing for a sports team, travel team, AAU, your parents are probably paying for you to do this. You know what I mean? Like, be grateful that you have parents who have the funds to be able to do this. Be grateful that you have parents who are willing to do this, you know, and they're willing to drive you all over the country to compete and to go to different camps and, you know, training situations. Like, again, a lot of people don't have these opportunities. And we just assume that everybody does, and we take them for granted. But you go to a lot of places in the world, and you know they don't get this kind of luxury. You know, if they want to play sports, they've got to find a can and kick it around a dirt road. You know, so if you're in a situation where you can play on an organized team, and you know you have a coach who knows the sport and you know knows more than you do and can teach you stuff, like that's amazing. It's amazing. And so I think just that baseline perspective shift of you get to do this, you get to learn from somebody, you get to hang out and interact and create bonds with your teammates and your friends, you get to develop your craft, your skills, your body, your mind through this vehicle, like shifting the whole way you're looking at engaging in your sport to a more grateful perspective, I think can be really helpful. And if you do this, it will help you to start feeling increased happiness, increased satisfaction, increased meaningfulness, increased productivity in your sport. So you're not just changing the way that you feel about it, but you're also changing your product, the outcome that you get. You're starting to get a better product from the same work that you're putting in. So all of that helps just from the training environment and the team and the coaching.
So, question I have, maybe more of like a scenario. So,
Okay.
pre gratitude practice, you're in a big game, or you have a big game coming up, and you're feeling a lot of anxiety about that. How is the way you approach that game, and the way you feel going into that game, going to be different after you've locked into a gratitude practice and you're like truly you've made it a trait, as you said, and now you're going into that same situation where you're up against a really tough opponent. Maybe it's a state championship, maybe it's a your first game in college or something like that, where you feel really nervous and anxious about things. How does that gratitude practice change the way you're going to approach those situations, or that situation differently based on gratitude?
Yeah, great question. And this this is, I guess, our opportunity to dive into how gratitude affects competition. So we talked about the training environment and the team and the coaching, but with competition, gratitude is hugely helpful. Gratitude acts as a natural antidote to pressure and anxiety and these pre-competition nerves that athletes feel, right? So when you practice gratitude, you start to alleviate some of those feelings that can oftentimes inhibit performance and cause you to underperform, right? So what's happening essentially is you're telling yourself the same thing. I get to do this. I get to compete. How awesome is this? Like it's one thing to train in the sport. It's one thing to have somewhere that you can go and, get better. But then it's another thing to be able to go compete and to be able to test your skills and, have the opportunity to perform and challenge yourself and to hopefully win. Like that's an incredible opportunity like we talked about before, practicing gratitude for the referees, umpires, your opponent. You don't get to compete if not for those people, and a lot of times we create negative perceptions of all these different groups, oh, screw the enemy. If they're not with us, they're against us, like all this kind of stuff. And then, I get that to a degree, but at the same point, like without them, there is no competition. This state championship game doesn't happen without two teams and without referees. So, I think just going in with this perspective of gratitude for everybody involved and that this situation and this event is even happening in the first place. Like, let's go. That's awesome. Like because this whole like web of things aligned and these stars lined up to where like I get to play a game today. Like that's what we're doing as athletes, as sports people is like we're playing games. And if you get to play a game that day, like that's an awesome day. So when you come in it with that perspective and with that emotion of gratitude, you feel like, wow, this is awesome. Like those are the underlying feelings or thoughts that you have. Like this is awesome. Like this is so cool that I get to do this. I work with some athletes and they're like, this feels like a movie. Like I'm living in a movie. This is the coolest thing ever. Like I get to do this. And I'm on TV and fans are there and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, like when you're a 6-year-old kid outside in the yard and you're thinking about yourself and you're in this moment and you're like counting down like 3, 2, 1, and like all these different things and you're like imagining the crowd and these all these things like that's that's what like really inspired us as kids. And then if you're privileged enough to be able to be in a situation like that as a college athlete or a professional athlete or even a high school athlete, like be grateful for that. That's something you literally dreamed of 10, 15, 20 years ago. And now you get to live that dream. Like this is a dream that you are living right now. And when you view it from that perspective, what you're doing is you're not viewing it from the doom and gloom perspective, which is what most people have when they go compete. Oh my God, what if I mess up? What if we lose? What if this all goes horribly wrong? That's what most people are feeling before they compete, and they have this like dark cloud looming over their head. It's like they're getting walked to their execution, and there's all this sense of terror that they're feeling because they're feeling threatened. That's what it is. It's a big threat that's happening to their ego, to the way that they view themselves, when really there is no threat. This is an opportunity for you to go out, play the game that you love, have fun, challenge yourself, and make memories that you're going to have for the rest of your life. Like, this is incredible, the opportunity that you have every single time you get to compete. And when you view it from that perspective, you start feeling less anxious. You start feeling less nervous. You start feeling less pressure. And you start feeling like this is going to be fun. Like, I can't wait. This is going to be a good time. I don't know if I'm going to win or not. There's no way of knowing that. There's no way to guarantee it. But this is what I love to do. I've been training for this my whole life, and now I get to go do it. Like, let's go. This is awesome. It's like, being in line for, some ride at Six Flags or Disney World or something like that. It's like, let's go. I've been thinking about this for weeks now. Now I get to do it. Like, this is awesome. Sure, you could be sitting in line thinking about the terror of, oh my God, what if a screw pops off and I end up going flying through the air? Like, you could do that, but how is that going to add value to your experience? How is that going to make your experience better? It's not. So it's the same thing, and I get it's hard sometimes because these pressures are heavy and they're intense, and it's hard to be able to sift through them and to let go of them and to bring yourself back to this grateful mindset. But that's why you've got to practice it consistently. And like we said before, the more you practice feeling grateful, the more easily you can feel grateful again. So if you want to feel grateful before competition, you better be feeling grateful frequently in the weeks leading up to that competition so that your body knows how to just slip back into that emotional pathway. If you haven't felt grateful ever in the last year, you're not just going to feel it before competition because you thought about it or because you wrote it down and said, I want to feel grateful today. That's not how it works. You've got to practice these things. They're skills, just like your technical skills and your physical skills. And the more you practice them, the more available they are to you on that competition day.
Very well said. It's like the anybody who watches tennis in the U.S. Open, as the players are walking out into the main stadium, Arthur Ashe Stadium is what it's called. There's a
Yeah.
sign, on the, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but like in the tunnel for the players. It's not like out on the court anywhere, but it just says pressure is a privilege. And Billie Jean King said it. And it's like, what a perfect saying, for what you were just talking about. Be
Yeah. It's
grateful, have
beautiful.
being in the situation where you have pressure.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And it is a privilege. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, it is. If you're playing at Arthur Ashe Stadium, or like at the US Open at all, that's something that people dream of. That's something that every single one of those athletes has dreamt of at some point in their life, and now they get to do it. Like, this is a privilege. I know it can be uncomfortable, if you allow it to be. I know it can be scary if you focus on the fears, but when you focus on the good aspects, when you kind of bask in the positivity and the optimism and the gratitude of it all, it's just incredible. It's just incredible, and yeah, it is a privilege to be in a situation to feel pressure because that means that you're on a big stage, and that's probably what you dreamed about at some point in your life.
And you got anything
Mhm.
else? Did we miss anything?
No, no, I think that's it. I mean, I hope that people, if they're able to take away anything from this, it's the practice and the more detailed explanation of the practice and how to do it the right way, as opposed to just writing down three things that they're grateful for, which is what a lot of people do. And, I work with a lot of athletes who tell me, like, oh, yeah, I've been practicing gratitude now for months. And then I tell them how to actually practice it. And they go, oh, I've never practiced before,
Right.
and that's okay. But hopefully now and now you can put the practice into practice the right way. And yeah, see how it feels. But you'll notice just from the first time you do it, like you feel that gratitude. Um, it's an incredible feeling, and so keep practicing it, keep feeling it. The more you feel it, the more easily you can feel it again in the future.
Cool. I'm gonna start it. I'm gonna
Okay,
start a practice today.
let's go. Let's go.
All right, hold on one sec. It's great, man.